Hello, welcome back. Today is one of the first really warm days in spring here in Canada. You'll see that the snow is mostly gone, apart from a few snow piles like the one behind me. And I thought today would be the perfect day to take you on a spring walk over to my studio and give you a studio tour. I've mentioned in past videos that I am in my home studio. Obviously that's not where we're going today. I just left home. Today we're heading to the KW Artists Co-op, which is a co-op studio that I started a few years ago that I share with 7 other artists. And I have a studio there that's totally distraction-free. So that's where I do most of my actual illustration work. So join me on my walk.
If you're new here, my name is Leanne Gold. I'm a botanical and natural science illustrator in Kitchener-Waterloo, Canada. And on this channel, I share watercolor techniques and tips and some insights into my daily life as an illustrator. If this is content that you're interested in, don't forget to hit like and subscribe down below. Thank you so much.
My regular walk to the studio takes me through a cemetery, which has turned out to be really great. This is a pro tip for you if you are an urban illustrator who wants to do natural science subjects. Cemeteries tend to be really great because of all the trees and wildlife. You can always find leaves and pine cones and other natural science subjects around a cemetery. Another thing that I'd like to mention is my travel mug. I'm really fussy about my mugs, both my travel mugs and my studio mugs, and I think I've finally come up with a great solution. This is just actually a mason jar. I got frustrated with all the insulated travel mugs that don't seal, so I got a mason jar. I was carrying around just a regular mason jar with a sock on it for a few weeks, and then I found these lids on Amazon, and it's just a plastic lid that's got a little cap on it, so I can just throw my coffee into a mason jar. I've got a little silicone sleeve on it, and have my coffee this way to go. After a year of painting a leaf every day in 2018, I can't help myself. I look at leaves on the ground all the time. I really like the pattern on this one, but I don't actually think that I have time to paint this. I have enough projects on the go, so. Okay, well we're here. My studio is in this building right here, so come on in.
I'm going to film the staircase just for shipping reasons.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
I have a camera with me.
Hi, camera.
It's running.
Meet my studio mate, Carly.
Hello.
Who's sleeping now as I come in. How was the Maple Syrup Festival?
Overwhelming, but good.
Okay.
Yeah, have fun.
Hi! So I'm just going to do a quick pan around of the studio right now for showing off my space and then showing everyone else's space in the studio. I will leave everyone else's social media and contact information down below so that you can see some awesome other local artists who I share my studio space with.
One of the perks of working in a shared space like this is, in addition to my own space, I've also got some shared amenities. So we've got quite a bit of comfy seating here, in addition to the hammock chair, which I'm sitting in, which I brought in. Several other people have brought in lounge chairs, beanbag chairs and stuff. We've also got a dining table and chairs, which we use for running workshops, as well as that's where I eat my lunch and dinner. We've got a little kitchenette of sorts with a bar fridge and microwave, a shared library, a washroom, and Sharl has set up a photography area in her space.
which we all use, which is really handy. Now I'm standing in my section of the studio. You can see that there's some tape lines around me that block off my section of the studio from other people's areas. So I'm just going to show you around my space. So this co-op studio is inside an old industrial building. So we've got this great loft space with 12-foot ceilings on the one side. Along this big gallery wall, about 3 years ago, I installed this pegboard display system, which has worked really well for flexible display for some of my art pieces that you see behind me. I really like working out of this co-op studio because I have fewer distractions than I have at home. So there's no computer here, I just do my illustration. It's also really, really nice to be surrounded by so many other creative people. My studio mates inspire me and motivate me to keep going and talk me up when I'm down. So it's really wonderful to have this co-op space with a bunch of other artists. My studio here is in the corner. You saw me pan around and show the big wall of windows on the opposite wall, but the lighting situation here works better for me because the way that I'm facing, the artificial light comes in from the same direction as the windows come in, so my lighting is pretty consistent through the day, which I really like. I also really like having this big display wall beside me because I'm actually quite productive. I make a lot of art. And so having this great big display wall really helps me keep my finished art pieces organized. Over here I've got a little storage piece that was originally in our first apartment's kitchen. On top of it I've got my greeting cards display. We do get a little bit of foot traffic, people who come through the studio doing other things in the building, so I do always have my greeting cards out, so people who come in can purchase some greeting cards. It's also just an easy way to store them. And underneath I've got all sorts of extra greeting cards, some art materials, you know, and here I've got some extra half pans and full pans. I won't go through too much of this organization system because actually I'm trying to clear it out. So now we're beside my little childhood desk. I've had this thing since I was about 2 or 3 years old, and I use this to store some of my packaging stuff, so all these drawers have pretty much exactly what they say on the label. And I also on top keep a collection of natural history specimens. So I have my little branches with lichen on them, shells, ammonite, fossils, all sorts of stuff that I've found and collected over the years. So here, for example, I've got this little bit of branch with some lichen on it. It's got some really beautiful orange lichen, which I'm planning on using for a future piece, as well as here's a little dried fungus that I found also on the trail behind the studio. So I collect things all around. Here's an abalone shell that somebody sent me. A number of ammonite fossils. Here is a Sputnik sea urchin, which you've seen in my finished piece of this in some of my previous videos. I'll also throw it up on screen. Some other shells from snails. And here are some burnt amethyst
crystals. Over here I've also got some limited edition prints as well as some originals from daily art challenges. So here are some old Inktober pieces. So to my left, I've got my paint display. So this has most of my extra tubes and pans. I do work from pan palettes, which I've got over on my desk, but this is where I keep my extra paint. In my next video, I'll go over how I sort these out and how useful this pegboard display is. So now we're sitting at my desk. This is where I do most of my illustration. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll probably recognize some of the stuff here. I've got 2 copies of the things that I use all of the time. So first of all, this bucket organizer is from IKEA, and I've got them everywhere. I've got them in my kitchen to organize my cutlery. I've got a version just like this in my home studio, and then here as well. So I've got my brushes organized into less frequently used brushes and other materials, my most frequently used brushes, pencils and pens, and then some other implements. I've also got 2 of this drawing board. So I do paint on a tilt. This allows me to control my washes better, as well as being a lot nicer for my back. And so I've got 2 versions of this drawing surface, one here and one at home. Right now I'm working on an illustration of a robin. So here I have my finished illustration. I have a sketchbook with some references. Here we go, which I'm using for reference. Above, I've got some of the sketches, some of my preparatory sketches, and over here I have a nest, which I'm also using for reference. I usually paint using ceramic plates as a mixing palette, so right now I'm just adding some shadows, so I've just got a little one. Also on my desk, I've got a towel, which I use for wiping off while I'm painting, some brushes, some little pens and pencils, a big water jug, and one of my favorite studio mugs. Finally, I do have a light, which I can use to add some additional light for my subjects. So that just switches on over here. That runs right through a hole in the desk, so that's really handy. Finally, in this desk, I have 2 drawers. Now generally I try to keep my storage as open as possible so I can see my things, otherwise I lose track of them. In most drawers I'll just end up with a jumble. But these ones work out pretty well because they're very shallow, so they can't hold a huge range of things. So in this drawer I've just got a few pads of paper. So for example, this is my Stonehenge Aqua, which I use most frequently. And in the other drawer, I keep my spare palettes. So that's both plates, like this one, which I've been using to mix gouache, and watercolor pan palettes, which I've only got a few of, but this is my main studio palette, and those just live in here. I hope you've enjoyed this
tour of my studio at the KW Artists Co-op. I find having this space is super useful to me, to have a place to go to work and to be inspired by other artists. And I'm super curious to know, in terms of how you work, how do you stay motivated and inspired and productive in your workspace? So tell me more about your studios down in the comments below. While you're there, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you'd like to see more content like this. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.